Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Josely Guerrero. I am the community organizer at the ACLU of Idaho. And today I have with me immigration attorney Monica Salazar from Salazar Law that's going to be answering some of our questions about DACA and the new rulings and what that means for DACA recipients. So thank you so much, Monica, for having me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. As a DACA recipient myself, I know that there's a lot of decisions and rulings that have been happening this month. And there's a lot of questions that myself and my other community members have. So I really want to dive into answering these questions. And I feel like right now there's a lot of fear in the community about what the future of DACA is. So thank you for sitting with me and having this conversation that's really important. So let's get started. So on October 5th of this year, the Fifth Circuit ruled that DACA is unlawful. So can you please explain what that ruling means?
Right. Well, just going back a little further in terms of the history of DACA, DACA was initiated in 2012 as an executive action by President Obama, and everything was great. The DACA program allowed many opportunities for our dreamers. And then, of course, we had the following presidency, who then attempted to end DACA. And of course, there was lots of lawsuits, which, it's a whole convoluted history of lawsuits. Ultimately, it went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court basically ruled that the Trump administration had not followed the proper procedures to end DACA, and so DACA remained alive. Then we had some states basically argue, okay, well, it's not a matter of procedure essentially, but a matter of DACA fundamentally is unlawful. And so this was brought before Judge Hainan of Texas, who essentially agreed with these states led by the state of Texas in saying that DACA was unlawful. Thereafter, there were some appeals, and so we had been waiting for a long time for the Fifth Circuit to decide as to whether they agreed with Judge Hainan or not. Unfortunately, as you stated, on October 5th, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with Judge Hainan in declaring that DACA was unlawful and sent it back to Judge Hainan to make a final determination. And so currently that is the state of affairs, and we are waiting to see what the Texas Judge Hainan will ultimately decide.
How does this decision impact current DACA recipients?
Yes, based on the current rulings, current beneficiaries of DACA are able to continue renewing their work permits and their status, the protection of deferred action, and they are advised to continue to do so on a timely basis, particularly those that have less than 6 months remaining on their current work permits should renew. Those that are within a year should probably get some advice as to whether it's beneficial to apply now. And those that are outside of a year should probably wait.
So I know that DACA recipients are still able to renew, but what about new DACA recipients, people that were wanting to apply or did apply for the first time? Are they still able to continue applying? Should they continue to wait for that decision to get DACA?
Right. So individuals who meet the requirements and who have filed an application since these lawsuits have been ongoing have had their applications placed on hold and have not received a decision. As of now, it appears that USCIS is indicating they will continue to accept those applications, issue a receipt, but they will be placed on hold without a decision. And so whether they are ever going to receive a decision or not will be dependent on the ultimate destiny of DACA. And so those who meet the requirements and wish to apply should really have a personal evaluation with an immigration attorney to evaluate the pros and cons as to whether there's any benefit to applying now or not.
And I think this year, another thing that we saw was that there is you can file DACA online. You can have that renewal online, but I know that there's a lot of people that are very skeptical about that process. Is it safe to apply online?
From our experience and what we have seen, the process of applying online seems to have streamlined. The timeline of receiving a decision and a new work permit, it seems to be faster. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be trustworthy or less trustworthy than the traditional methods. So it appears to be an efficient manner of renewing your applications for DACA renewal.
Here's a situational question that somebody had asked. So if I sent my DACA renewal a few months ago and I still haven't heard back from USCIS, what should I do or what can I do? And then also, why is it taking so long?
If you have received a receipt, then that is the first thing. Once you have a receipt, as you probably know, you're able to track through the receipt number on the USCIS website. Immigration publishes their typical processing time, which they determine to be normal. And if you also go to the USCIS website, there's a section there where you can make an inquiry if your application was submitted and it's now outside of the posted processing times. Overall, most immigration processes have seen significant delays in the most recent years, partly because of COVID and partly because of various, other things done by the prior administration.
Thank you. Another question that keeps surfacing a lot, and I know that's the question that I've had as well, with all of the DACA rulings that are happening, can DACA recipients still apply for advanced parole?
Currently, advanced parole applications are being processed. Individuals who currently have been granted advanced parole and are outside of the country, we would expect them to be allowed to return. However, there is no certainty as to the future of advanced parole, as there is, of course, no certainty as to the future of DACA. One question and concern would be, what if DACA were to be eliminated or terminated and there's an individual out of the country with advanced parole, will they be allowed to return? Quite honestly, that's something that's uncertain to me at this point, and so it's something to be cautious about.
Okay, thank you. So as of right now, would you recommend people to apply for advanced parole, or is it more like on a case-by-case basis?
Definitely a case-by-case basis, not only because of the uncertainty as to the destiny of DACA, but it's always a case-by-case basis, as we need to evaluate the history of an individual so that if there's some sort of complication, or for instance, the individual has been previously in an immigration court proceeding, that their leaving doesn't further complicate their history.
And thank you for that, because I know that has been, people have been messaging like, can I apply for advanced parole, or my advanced parole got approved, but I'm really scared to go back. And I think it's really important to realize that it is by case basis, and I think it's taking that judging it, personal judgment of whether that is the best choice or not, especially with all of this attacks for the program, right? Another thing is, there's a lot of talk about how the DACA program will be terminated, and that is a very scary situation to think about. So now that, all of us DACA recipients, our information is out there, right? What would happen if DACA is terminated completely? Like, does that mean that we can get deported, knowing that the government, knows about our immigration status?
Unfortunately, there is cause for concern as to the destiny of DACA. It is a possibility that the DACA program would be terminated. If that happens, I think the anticipation is that individuals who currently have DACA would be allowed to phase out of their current protection. And to answer your question more directly, the concern here is that USCIS, Immigration, Department of Homeland Security, has the personal information, addresses, everything about the individual. Will immigration then go after for purposes of deportation enforcement or removal enforcement? There are provisions in the law that prevent Department of Homeland Security to share information with other organizations within DHS or Department of Homeland Security. Namely, these provisions prevent DHS to share this information with ICE directly. So I don't expect that there would be massive attempts to remove DACA recipients. When a DACA recipient finds themselves in potential removal situation, is probably because they have encountered some sort of law enforcement issue.
So when can we expect to have a final decision on DACA? Because I feel like right now it's just been a roller coaster, for DACA recipients, not knowing what DACA what is going to happen to DACA. So when can we expect to hear a final decision on the program?
Well, as of right now, we're waiting for a decision from the Texas court, Judge Keenan. Whatever he decides, of course, again, anticipating that it's probably not going to be positive because he's already shown that his opinion of DACA is not positive. We expect that any negative decision will be appealed and probably ultimately go to the Supreme Court of the United States. How long or when that's going to happen, I don't believe anybody can ascertain with any clarity.
And what would you recommend, or what are things that you recommend DACA recipients to do and prepare for while we wait for that final decision? What is the best recommendation you have for them?
To explore other options. We have many DACA recipients who over time have potentially married a U.S. citizen or a resident and might have avenues potentially through that marriage to become a resident. We know that DACA was never a solution to permanent status in the country. It was a temporary measure. And there are individuals who have procrastinated, delayed in seeking a more final resolution to their status. Other options, there might be individuals who potentially have been a victim of a crime and could look into a U visa application, or individuals who potentially benefit from a family petition filed years ago that might now become current. In general, just to explore other options that might be available towards residency.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Monica, for having this time to explain what the DACA ruling is about and what our options are, as well as DACA recipients to look further into, fixing status. Because as we know, as DACA recipients, there is no pathway to citizenship. But like you mentioned, there are different avenues if people have gotten married to search for something more permanent. So I appreciate your time, and that's going to be all for us. So make sure if you have more questions that you can follow different places and websites like United We Dream, ACLU of Idaho, where we will be having more information about the DACA ruling. And also thank you, Monica Salazar from Salazar Law, for having all of this information and providing that information for us today.
Thank you.